Okay. 3.33. You cannot redo. That fucking sucked. Okay, let's just get into it. So, this is like the complete and total departure from everything that was previously Eva. Everything is brand new. Like, 2.22 had some vestiges of the old Neon Genesis in it, and this one is completely new, which in theory is great. I would like to see where this is definitely supposed. At this point, it's definitely supposed to be a sequel, because there is a line where Kaoru says, "This time I will make you happy," or "This time I will save you," or something like that. Like, there were hints of that. There were kind of lines like that earlier in this, but this for sure is a sequel to Eva. This is a remake of this world. The world has somehow been rebuilt after End of Evangelion. I will be very shocked if that is not the case when we get to Thrice Upon a Time, but that's where it is now. So let's talk about why this movie fucking sucks. So, once again, Eva is not a hard series to understand what it's about. It gets complicated in the details, like the technobabble and the religious symbolism. That's where it gets complicated. But in terms of what its themes are, Eva is not a hard series to understand. Same with the rebuilds. 3.0, or 3... I'm just going to say 3.0. I don't give a shit. 3.0 is very much... It's what it seems like it's doing is setting up this idea of just the world shitting on you for no good reason. Like, throughout this film, Shinji is constantly doing things and making people mad without really understanding why that makes... without them explaining why that makes them mad. And, like, the end of 2.0... The end of 2.0 causes basically a near third impact. Shinji doesn't fucking know that until, like, 35 or 40 minutes into this movie. And it's like, we have a time skip. It's 14 years later. And so now everyone is pissed off at Shinji. So... And then, even at the end of the movie, like, we see people turning on Shinji again. Like, when he's trying to grab both of the spears. Even Kaoru is like, wait, Shinji, stop, no. Like, there's even, like, almost a look of disdain on Kaoru's face at one point. But, obviously, Kaoru is much more forgiving of everyone than... forgiving of Shinji than everyone else. But, there is still this, like... And, like, Asuka and Mari are constantly being like, don't do this shit, you're pissing us off. No one's fucking explaining anything to Shinji. That is the problem with this movie. And this is when I want to circle back to what I said in the first video. I want to amend that statement because I think I was using the wrong terminology. I said meta-narrative doesn't work without base narrative. And I think just in a broader sense, I should say thematic exploration doesn't work if the base narrative that is exploring those themes doesn't work. The theme here is Shinji constantly fucking up in terms of the plot and no one explaining to him why he's doing it wrong, and everyone just gets pissed off at him for it, even though he has no concept of what he's doing. Interesting theme. It's an interesting theme. A very applicable to real life theme. Like, the world not explaining to you why you're wrong, just getting pissed off at you and saying that you suck. Cool concept. But it doesn't fucking work in this movie. Because we understand everything. But Shinji doesn't. I realize I'm doing a shitty job at explaining why it sucks, but okay, so like the first half hour of this movie is Shinji trapped on board the Wunder, which is like Misato's new ship. There's a bunch, and it's just a bunch of adults looking at Shinji with disdain for this thing that A, he didn't want to do, and B, he had no control over doing. Now, I'm trying to think if a better way to approach this is if I don't see, this is why I'm not a writer. I can't come up with off the top of my head a better way to approach this, but the way this movie does it is just fucking infuriating and not interesting. Like, these are... Okay, here's a better way to do it. Approach this same theme with dumb or evil characters. Because we have already well established that all of the characters in this show are really fucking smart. Like, these are government agents, essentially. People, like, working in like, super secret government sectors. Asuka graduated college by the time 2.0 started. These are fucking smart people. And yet, no one has the foresight to explain to Shinji, your entire being causes the third impact. That's why we can't have you even remotely close to an Eva anymore. No one is smart enough or empathetic enough to sit down and explain that to a 14-year-old child. That is why this movie doesn't work, because we've already established both of those aspects of these characters. That A, they're really smart, and B, they are trying to be empathetic. They are understanding of Shinji's troubles. Especially in 2.0, both Misato and Asuka start to really understand Shinji in that movie. So for them to have a complete 180 in 3.0 makes no fucking sense. If it was everyone else in the world, sure, that would have been fine. But the people who are closest to Shinji just completely turning on him, even though they fully understand what the fuck went wrong, makes no sense. It is not interesting, it doesn't make sense with the plot, and it doesn't make sense with the themes. It makes no sense on any level. On a plot level, on a theme level, on a character level, on an anything level. It doesn't work. So, the whole first third of this movie is a fucking botch. And also, while we're talking about the first third, the action scene with the Wunder was fucking awful. Like, it was just A, pretty lights, and B, completely ignoring physics. And I'm not talking like theoretical physics like that Ava dives into with its weird technobabble. I'm talking like basics of force. Like, there's a scene where there's this moment where the Wunder is like attached to 4 different enemies. I don't even know if they're angels at this point or nemesis or whatever. We'll get into the not explaining that later. But there's a scene where there's like 4 enemies attached to the Wunder by like cables or tentacles or something. And so the Wunder spins around in a circle and like uses centripetal force to keep them in a loop. And then at one point the Wunder stops. And one of the enemies also stops with the Wunder, and the other 3 keep going and crash into the first one. That's not how physics works. That's not how force works. All of them would continue going until the air resistance depletes the rest of the force. That is how physics works. There's no conceit unless the laws of physics completely remove themselves from this world, which is possible, but they don't explain it, so fuck off. Unless that's what happened, there is no reason for that first one to just stop and then for a fucking car wreck to stop, a series of fender benders to start up behind them. So that sucked. The design of the Wonder is fucking garbage. It's a shitty looking ship. Just a not fun fight scene. It's just pretty light shows and mediocre CG. Now you may have noticed that I haven't harped on the CG that much throughout the series. I briefly touched on it in the first video and thought it was like okay. I don't think I said anything about it in the second video. 3.0 is where the CG looks bad. Not bad. It looks not good. It looks fake. It looks fake. It looks over-designed. It looks unfinished in terms of rendering. It's just not good. Now, with the one part where the CG does look good is with the Evas. That's the part where the CG looks good. Everything else looks not good. Like the Wonder, all these other CG things. And I feel like I'm giving this a lot more credit than I should. Because it just doesn't look good. But in any case, so the first third of this movie was just garbage nothingness. Not garbage nothingness, just garbage. Like, and that sort of leads into like another kind of big complaint that I have about this movie is there is no structure to this. Like, there's no build up to anything. There is no sense of tension or release as the movie goes along. There's no like big thing. It's just things happening in a sequence and then it ends. Like, there is a climax of sorts, but it's just so all over the place and just comes out of nowhere that it really doesn't impact you like a climax. This movie just has the bare bones structure of a story, of part of a story, with no sense of pacing, no sense of tension, no sense of build-up. It's just things in a sequence. And it's so fucking boring. And you know what else is boring? Technobabble and religious babble. Now, why I didn't mind this in Neon Genesis is because usually what they did at the end of it was Shinji would go, "Hey, I'm kind of dumb. What does that mean?" And then Asuka would be like, "What are you, an idiot? We're doing this." And then she would say it in a manner that was simpler. This movie doesn't do that. It's just technobabble after technobabble, and I'm just sitting there going, that means nothing to me. What's going on? Now, if that's how I'm supposed to feel, then it certainly achieved that, but why the fuck am I supposed to feel that way? Am I supposed to be clueless about what's going on? Am I supposed to feel like an idiot? Am I just an idiot? I might be, but considering that everyone else had these kind of problems with this movie, I'm gonna go ahead and say that it sucks. This movie makes me fucking furious. Somehow I hate it more than I did when I watched it a few years ago. Because I think I actually understand what was... Somehow, I understand more and also understand less. And I fucking hate the... I'm just jumping all over the place. I don't give a shit. Like, going back to the Shinji Shinji didn't do anything wrong in this movie. That's the thing. Like, plot-wise, he made the incorrect choice, but he didn't do anything wrong because no one fucking told him that it was wrong. And then even at the very end, we have Asuka and Mari telling him, like, stop being a baby. Pick yourself up. Stop doing this shit. Why? Shinji is fully in his rights to have a fucking mental breakdown at this point. Now, if that's the point, sure. I will expect Thrice Upon a Time to answer that. But what the fuck? No one is giving Shinji a break at any point in this. And it's just... And it seems... And it doesn't even seem like the film is saying that that's a bad thing. It's just totally neutral about it. It's not saying... The film is not saying everyone is harping on Shinji and that's bad. It's not... It's just not saying that. We understand that that's bad because that's our morals, and we understand that as smart human beings, but the film is not saying that. It sucks. Oh, here's a hot take. The piano scene did nothing for me. It was well animated, but emotionally didn't really click with me at all. Partly because as a musician and someone who has a little bit of experience with piano, or just as someone with common sense, you don't go from searching for keys on the keyboard to playing full-on chords in the matter of 30 seconds. That's not how that works. So partly that, but also it's just a weird interaction. I understand kind of thematically the point of it. Like, Kaoru's trying to get Shinji to open up to new experiences, I guess, just to let himself be a little looser with himself. But it just didn't hit for me for some reason. There was some interesting imagery. Like, they even had, like, a shot of, like, a horse, a still image of, like, a horse running or something. Like, freedom, I guess. But, again, it's predicated on something that does not exist, does not happen in real life. You don't go from tick, 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 tick to full-on fucking chords matching a guy who's a fucking piano prodigy without ever having played the fucking song before that quickly. Oh, but maybe Kaoru's, like, angel powers allowed him to connect with him. Don't care. It's not explained, so it's not real. It's infuriating and just not emotionally compelling. Somehow, even though I think Kaoru has more screen time in this movie than in episode 24 of Neon Genesis, somehow he is less interesting of a character. Like, the only interesting part was him taking on the sins that Shinji was carrying before with the collar. Might as well have been a crown of thorns, but again, these movies really aren't using religious imagery in interesting ways. So that's a thing. Gendo's still being a prick, which is fine. Wouldn't have expected any of that to change. I think the concept with rebooting Rei was interesting. Again, like, that could have been more interesting if it had gotten more time. Somehow, well, actually, no, that actually kind of makes sense now that I think about it. This is the shortest movie of the whole tetralogy, and so it explains the least. Like, there's so much less, like, plot and character information in this movie than the other two movies that I've seen so far, which is probably why I'm so pissed off, because it's mostly just, there's so many just shots of emptiness and Shinji being surrounded by that emptiness, which is cool. I get it. Shinji's being engulfed by this desolate world that he unintentionally created. Cool idea, but you didn't have to do it so much. It's at that point it's just eating up screen time, and could have been used for other. If this movie needed to be less than 100 minutes, there were a bunch of other things that could have been done instead. And it's there. This movie is so light on characterization. Like, I would have liked another 10 minutes just on Rey trying to come to terms with the fact that she is a copy, and not just lifting vague ideas from the TV series again. But we didn't get that. I would have loved to see Shinji and Kaoru interact outside of a piano duet, but we don't get a whole lot of that. I hate this movie. I do. I really do. Also, if I see that fucking color red again one more time, I'm gonna puke. Like, it is the most sickly looking red ever. And I get that's probably the point, but holy shit, this movie is beating us over the head with it. Now the color design has looped all the way around from incompetent to just ugly. Like, before, the color design was just not at a point where it was clear with its coloration, where like stuff just kind of bled into each other and it just looked kind of muddy and jumbled. Not so much the case here. Now it just looks fucking ugly. Like, these are just, there is a putridness to it. Now again, if that's the point, sure, but it doesn't make for a visually engaging movie if you use it the whole fucking time. Like, this movie is so dreadful that it's just not engaging. The one thing I thought was okay was the soundtrack. Shirasagisu being a cheeky little, and Ano being cheeky, and using Ode to Joy for the final fight, where they're opening the door of Guff or whatever. Gafu, however you want to pronounce that. I'm running out of stuff to say. This is just, it's a bad movie. If you're into it for the aesthetics, I can understand that. If you're into it for the animation, I could kind of understand that. I don't get how you can like the story of this movie. I really don't. It's so bonkers nothingness. It is simultaneously infuriating with what it does have and infuriating with what it doesn't have. This feels like an incomplete movie. This feels like this feels like a ton of content was cut from this movie to make way for action scenes that really didn't leave much of an impression. Like, these action scenes were not exciting or thrilling in any way. They were well animated. I'll give them that. Except for the fucking ship. They were well animated. They just weren't interesting fight scenes. Maybe the exchange between Rey and Asuka when Asuka goes beast mode and such. That was like the one bit that was interesting. Everything else was just flashing colors and shit, and it just didn't hold my attention at all. My eyes were glazing over during these fight scenes. And I think that's all I have to say. That's all I'm gonna say. Join me in a little bit for 3.0 plus 1.0, Thrice Upon a Time.